All right guys, Mike here with EBR, and this is the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0. It's the sequel to the original Basalt that they released a couple years back that was very popular. And what made it so popular was the ability to get the accessories that come with this, which are the power inverter, 1,000-watt power inverter, spare batteries for as low as $199, and the ability to run this and charge this off-grid with just solar panels. Now, they kept all those really cool off-grid power station features of this bike, which everyone loved, and then they also tweaked and bumped up some of the components and specs. So we'll talk about all those new details, what it covers, how they performed in the real world, and my overall thoughts in this review of the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0. All right guys, so let's go over the basics of the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0. So this is, like I said in the intro, their fat tire kind of power station off-grid bike, and it's priced at $18.99, and it is UL 2271 certified. Now, this bike weighs about 80 pounds advertised, but when you put it up on the scale, it's a little bit more like 82, 83. The battery itself is around 11 pounds because it's a pretty beefy battery. And then, so if you remove the battery, that takes this down to the low 70s, 71, 72 pounds, and up to about 82, 83 pounds with the battery inside of it. Now, on top of that, this is a one-size frame option for the high step. Now, if you want a step-through version, they do sell this in a step-through version. We also have a review, which we can hopefully link to down below if you want to check out the step-through version. Now, the step-through version has a couple extra sizing options. They have a standard frame and a large frame, but in this high-step version like we have here, it is one size fits most. But I kind of like this. It's a nod to the taller riders. This is a 5'7" on the low end up to 6'9". And I will say, as someone who's 5'11", I'm closer to the low end on that, so I'm just, 4 inches from the bottom of that. And I thought the bike felt a little bit big for me, but I think that's great because we don't see too many bikes that cater to riders over 6'4", 6'5". So it leads me to believe that if you are in those taller rider heights, you'll actually be able to find a comfortable home on a bike that fits you here, which is pretty cool. And again, if you need something for shorter riders below 5'7", check out the step-through model. That one has a standard frame size and a large frame size that covers a much wider range for much shorter riders as well. So there really is something for everybody with that Mokwheel Basalt lineup, just depending on how tall you are and what your comfort levels are. Now, some geo numbers for this one size frame on the high step. That standover height is at 30 inches because it is a higher crossbar. It's not going to be low like a step through. The wheelbase from front to rear hub or vice versa is 46 inches. The max payload on the bike is 400 pounds, which is about 50 pounds more than the step through version. So if you need that extra cargo, you can go for the high step version because the step through is at 350. This one is at 400 pounds. Now, the reach is listed up top as 17 inches, but that's a huge caveat because you have a super nice 90-degree adjustable stem, and based on how you move that stem, that's really going to change that overall reach for you. So I'd say let's more like anywhere between 14 inches and maybe 18 to 20 inches, just depending on where you move that handlebar stem angle. That's really going to just dictate what kind of reach you have on this bike. Now, the seat post can be adjusted about 8 inches, which is about 32 inches or 34 inches from the ground up to about 42 inches when it's maxed out. And in terms of wheels and tires, we have a pretty standard fat tire setup. We've got a 26-inch alloy wheel, and it's wrapped in a 26 by 4-inch wide all-terrain tire. Now, this tire not only is pretty beefy with all-terrain knobbies on it, but you also have sidewall reflective strips here. So if somebody's approaching from in the evening or night with headlights on, they're going to see these two rolling reflective strips go by. And another cool thing about these tires is they are rated for a very low PSI because they're super high volume. So these can be run anywhere from 5 pounds, just 5 PSI, all the way up to a max of 30, which for most bike tires is very, very low. But on a big beefy tire like this with high volume, you can run, like I said, as low as 5 PSI. Now, granted, that's not going to be as efficient. It's not going to roll as fast, but it's going to give you tons of good grip off-road, allowing you to have a really nice footprint on rocks and things like that if you're going into some really rough terrain. But I like to see personally around 15 PSI right in the middle of the road. That gives me some cush for extra vibration dampening in the back end. It feels a little bit more like having suspension back here. But if you really want to max out range, efficiency, and speed, you could go all the way up to 30 PSI and have that lowest amount of rolling resistance. I just feel like PSI around 15 is a good balance of grip, traction, comfort, and still having most of the speed and efficiency that I want. On top of that, we have fenders and racks. They are a plastic fender, both front and rear. And then the rear rack here has a nice wooden platform to it with the Mokwheel branding embossed on it, and it is rated for 55 pounds. So on top of that, if you want to have extra gear, you do have some bottle cage mounts on the down tube, but really, with fenders, racks, and then the lighting system, we have an adjustable LED light up front. We have an always-on tail light with braking indicator and turn signals. So you could do anything from off-grid riding around in the backcountry and just going exploring with the power inverter and the solar charging, or you could use this as a daily, just beefy commuter. You've got front-to-back lighting, racks, fenders, turn signals. You've really got a bike that can adapt to any environment. It may not fit in camouflage-wise as far as, the looks of it. It's not gonna look like a commuter, but it can definitely do the duties of an off-grid bike or a daily commuter. Now, speaking of camo and colors, this is the matte black, but it comes in a couple other ones. They also have a light gray. They also have a blue color. And then for an additional $100, so for $19.99, you can get the full camo version for those of you out there who like to use these e-bikes for wilderness grounds, backcountry hunting, things like that. This will just on your property, your farm, this is gonna give you an option to go with a full camo option or just a color that you like. I'm always a fan of matte black, but in general, this bike is really rigged out for a little bit of anything you wanna do with it. It can tackle it. All right, so let's talk about the power on the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0 because that is a strong suit for the Mokwheel lineup, especially in their off-grid or fat tire bikes. These are very powerful e-bikes. So right here we have a rear hub motor. It's a 48-volt motor that runs 750 watts nominally, but peaks at 1100 watts and pushes out 90 Newton meters of torque. Now that's a very solid setup for a bike like this. And there's some cool features with this motor that we don't always see. So we have our standard riding modes. You have your PAS 1 through 5, each getting progressively more powerful. But if you go onto the advanced settings, which I'll walk you through here in a second when we look at the display, you can actually change the intensity settings of the motor. So you have standard 5 levels of pedal assist, but whether you assign an intensity level of 1 up through 5, you can dictate how aggressive your pedal response is. So if I was to set it to level 5, you get very punchy off the line throttle that kind of it could be a little bit jolting or startling if you're not ready for it. And if you want something way more relaxed or you're new to riding e-bikes and you're not sure about the power and you want to ease into it, you can dial that intensity setting all the way back to 1 and get a much more relaxed ride that lets you ease into the power of the bike. And then you can incrementally go up intensity 2, intensity 3, until you're comfortable where you find a sweet spot. And that could be at level 5, maxed out power, or that could stay at level 1, keeping things relaxed and cool. It's just a really nice way for users and riders and owners to find their comfort level with the bike without having to adapt to it. This almost lets the bike adapt to you, which is a really nice personalized feature and custom motor tuning that you don't always see in a lot of e-bikes, but when they have stuff like this, I just think it goes a long way in letting the rider who just shelled out a bunch of money for this bike slowly lean into learning to ride it the way that they want to. But of course, if you want to just open it up and set it to intensity setting 5, PAS 5, you can go full blast from day 1. It really is your call, which is a nice feature. Now, in terms of motor sensor, this has both a cadence and torque sensor. Mokwheel over the years is always looking to continue and improve their torque sensors on their e-bikes, and this one would be their best one yet. It is pretty natural feeling, pretty smooth, not completely perfect and refined like maybe a high-end specialized, but overall it feels really nice, and it's a nice step up from a standard cadence sensor, so you can have just that more natural pedaling feel should you want it. Now, in terms of the battery, it's fully encased in the down tube here. It's a 48-volt battery that's got roughly 941 watt hours, so a very beefy battery, and it's also UL 2271 certified. Now, normally I would just break out a set of keys and show you how that drops out. I did forget the keys with me today, so just know that it's a very simple process. You pop the key in on the non-drive side, the battery will drop right here, and you can pull it out really easy. Now, in terms of mileage, they say you can get between 60 and 80 miles on a single charge. So of course, I gave that a test in my own time with the bike. I ran 2 runs, one on max PAS and one on minimum PAS. Now, on the max assistance, I was able to get about 37 miles, so that's going full speed, 37 miles, about 2.5 hours of riding. It's pretty solid. And then if you switch it to minimum assistance, only going, 9, 10, 11 miles an hour, much slower, well, then I was able to get 72 miles. So really their estimation of 60 to 80 and mine going testing both extreme ends, getting 37 to 72, I'd say is right in the ballpark of what they were expecting. And if you're someone who varies power, doesn't just live at PAS 5 or live at PAS 1 like I did in my testing, and you do natural usage like level 2, level 3, up to level 5, backing back down like a lot of people do, most normal riders do, it's no doubt in my mind you could stay anywhere between 60 and 80 miles like they advertise on any given full charge day. Now, when it comes to things like components on the Basalt 2.0, that's where we saw an increase in some of the specs and components, and I'll point those out as we go through them. And I'll start back here with the first one that did get a change, and that is we bumped up from a 7-speed Shimano Tourney to an 8-speed Shimano Altus. Now, this 8-speed has the Altus derailleur. It has an 8-speed cassette, which is a 14 to 28 tooth rear cassette, and then you have a massive 52 tooth chainring up front. That combination of chainring and rear cassette gives you plenty of power, pedaling power all the way through, up through about 20 something miles an hour, and then it starts to get a little weak. But once you're going over 20 something miles an hour on an 80-pound bike, you're probably using motor assistance anyway. But for day-to-day getting around with pedal assist, it feels really good, and I never felt like I needed a whole lot more gears or less gears. I never felt over or under geared. It's pretty spot on for a bike of this size with motor assistance. Now, we also have 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and then mated to those are platform pedals. They are aluminum pedals, so alloy platform pedals with traction studs and reflectors for visibility when you're riding at night. Now, in terms of braking, we have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. These are a 2-piston caliper with a 180 millimeter rotor, both front and back. And this braking system is sufficient for a bike of this weight. Didn't have any issues with it, and being Tektro's setup, it's going to be easy to get repairs, servicing, things of that nature down the road. Now, let's look at the saddle here. So this saddle here is kind of a not proprietary, it's just an unbranded saddle from Mokwheel, but it's super wide, comfortable, has spring supports on the bottom, and a little handle here grip for lifting the bike if you want to move it. Very comfy saddle. Now, up in the front here, we do have suspension. We have a 110 millimeter coil spring fork here that has a preload and lockout adjustment, so I can twist that to the right, and that locks out the fork for things like strapping it down. You don't want that thing to compress, or if you just want to remove the suspension altogether, you could just lock it out and have a rigid frame and ride it that way. Now, the bar here is an alloy bar. It's a kind of typical flat bar with a small rise to it. The center point is a 31.8 millimeter. And then, of course, we have all of our cables coming off the front end. They eventually get routed together and into the frame for their final destination. Now, on both ends of the bar here, we do have the Tektro alloy levers that do have small, like 2 millimeter Allen key slots for you to adjust the reach on these. And then in the center, we have on the other left and right side, we have the Shimano under the bar trigger shifters with the window showing you what speed you're in. You can just glance down and see where you're at. And on the right side, this left side, we have the push throttle and the PAS control buttons. In the center, we have new Mokwheel's display, which is their 2.0 display, which has a cool feature of a detachable faceplate. Now, this is something that if you park downtown and you don't want your bike to scream e-bike that you could just jump on and ride away with, not only is there things like security passwords you can set, but you can also just pop that off as quick as you saw me do it, put it in your pocket, go in the store, do what you got to do, and it just doesn't scream, steal me, take me, things like that. And then to put it back on, it's just as simple as it came off. You just line up the grooves here. Oops. You line up the grooves and, well, it's upside down, just kidding. There we go. And it's right back on. It's really quick on, really quick off, and it's just a nice peace of mind if you're in a downtown area and you just want that little extra layer of security. You can take that with you when you go into a store. But let's take a closer look at what the features of this display are, because it's got a lot of new settings, features, and a nice color display that we can show you. All right, so this is the home screen on the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0. Up top in the center is going to be your battery remaining, so your current charge level, and on either side is going to be the turn signal indicator. So if I use the control pad here, hit the left turn signal, you can see it illuminate. Same for the right side. Now below that in the top right is going to be the current PAS level, so same thing with the buttons. If I go up in PAS, I can see that that will change there on the screen as well. In the center is going to be the speed, which is currently in miles per hour, but if you want kilometers per hour, you can certainly change it, and I'll show you how to do that in the advanced settings. Down below, we have some trip metrics, like the current, how many minutes it's been on and how many miles in this trip. But if we want to go look at some more advanced settings, what we can do is we can hold the plus and the minus, and this is going to take us to our technical settings. And here you can change things like the language. And for languages, they have quite a few to pick from there. So depending on where this bike gets shipped or what language you prefer to be native, this would be where you could change that language. Here you can go down to your assist level and you can determine whether or not you want 3 levels of pedal assist or 5 levels of pedal assist. Going down below, you have voltage level, but I tend not to mess with that unless support directs you to, because I think once you start messing with voltage levels, unless you know what you're doing, you could cause some problems on the bike. Down here to wheel diameter, same thing. Unless you change the wheel size, I probably would not change that. Tacho magnets is also going to be another thing that I would not change unless directed to. And then down below, you can go into your factory reset. So if you sold the bike or just want to clear everything, or support directed you to clear everything, this is where you would factory reset it. Now, those are not the most helpful menus for most people, aside from maybe the language and the assist level. So we'll back out of there and we'll go into what's called the functional settings. And that's where you can get most of the things that you're actually going to care about. So we're going to hold both turn signal buttons at the same time. And that's going to take us to the function settings. So the first one's going to be brightness, and that's going to be this screen brightness. You can have it on levels 1 through 3 or on auto, and you just pick one in there. So right now it's on automatic. And then based on your ambient light outside, it will dictate how bright the screen gets. Down below that's going to be that units of measurement. So if you want to change from miles per hour to kilometers per hour, here's where you can do that. Down here you can go and set a limit on your throttle speed. Right now I have it maxed out just to see what I could get out of the bike. But if you wanted to dial that back, you certainly could. We'll see how low this goes here. It's usually around 12 is the lowest. Nope. So this will let you go all the way down to basically 0 to 99. But I can tell you from testing, the bike's not going to, at least for me, it didn't go over about 28, 29 miles an hour. You're certainly not going to go 99, but you can set that limit at a more safe speed. So maybe someone new to riding the bike is riding it. One of your kids wants to ride it. Maybe you haven't been on a bike in a long time and you just bought this and you're a little concerned about going too fast or bumping the throttle. This is where you can control that, which is a nice feature. And then remember, you always have your E cutoff sensors on the brake levers as well. But, get back into there by holding the turn signals. So we'll go back in and set that to a more appropriate speed for the next person that rides this, because they're probably not going to want to have a throttle to 6 miles an hour. So we'll put that back down to 28. To set the setting, you'll need to hit the power button, and that will back you out. But if you go back in, you'll see it's set at 28. So we'll back out. We'll go down to assist settings. This is where you can set speed limits for each level of pedal assist. So right now in PAS1, it's set at 17. But if you wanted to make that lower and only ride the bike in PAS1, you could dial this back to say 10 miles an hour, press power, then PAS1 would not go past 10 miles an hour, or you could max it all the way out and go all the way up to 28. It's just really up to you, and you can do that through all 5 levels of pedal assist here in the menu, so that's a nice feature for a lot of folks. Now down below is the intensity settings, which is probably my favorite setting that Mokwheel offers, because yes, we have 5 levels of pedal assist, but if we want to kind of control the power delivery across all 5 levels, if you want all 5 levels to be more reserved, if you want all 5 levels to be more punchy, this is where you can change that in the intensity settings. And it's on a scale from 1 to 5. So if you're new to this, like I said, and you want to just take things easy, set it on level 1. The bike will ship to you as level 3 right in the middle of the road. And if you want to max it out, you can go to level 5. So we'll put that back to level 3 just for kind of factory settings. Down here, riding mode. This one will let you put the bike in a couple configurations. So say you don't want to use the motor, you can just do pedal only, or you can go to motor only and use the throttle, or like a true e-bike, pedal and motor. So we'll back out of here. Startup mode, you can choose between a free mode or a safe mode. Down here is your fault check, so if you got some things running incorrectly, you can check the error codes, but as you can see, we don't have any. And then down below, you can reset the trip meter. Here you can get your version number, so current version number of the display. And to back out, you simply hit the back button. And that takes you through not only the home screen that we just covered, changing the units of speed, but also those technical settings and function settings, all of which kind of control everything about how the bike rides and feels when you're out on the road. And with the new detachable display, it's just got an extra layer of security. And with high color contrast like this, it looks good in most light. It's been a really solid display overall. All right, out here on the Basalt 2.0. And before I jumped on this, I felt like the handlebars were a little too far forward with that 90-degree bend in the stem. So I loosened this Allen key right here, was able to bring it up maybe 2 inches, and that really brought the reach into a much more comfortable position. And if I wanted, I could have come all the way up, but I wasn't looking for a full-on cruiser feel. But this was more upright and comfortable, which is the beauty of adjustable stems. Also, I don't know how well you can hear it on camera, but I'm obviously on smooth pavement right now. And
I can tell that aside from the wind noise in my ears, I can hear a little bit of motor noise when it ramps up. Like right there, you can hear that. And other than that, a tiny bit of just rotational noise from the tires, just the sound of tread rolling on the pavement. And that's it. It's a pretty quiet bike. There's not a lot of mystery rattles. And if I wasn't in PAS 5, the motor would be a lot quieter. In fact, let's just go to like PAS 3 and just hold that for a bit. We're also going to go up this hill here to my left. So this hill to my left is about 5 to 7%. The first half is about 5, then it gets to 7% up near those vehicles up there. So heading up the hill in PAS 3, I'm still accelerating, not very quickly, but I'm definitely not falling back or just holding a speed. I'm still progressing. But let's go to PAS 4 and 5. And now you can see we can really accelerate. In fact, I'm accelerating up over 23, 24, 25. And I'm not doing crazy hard pedaling. You don't hear my breath getting out of, my heart rate raising, going out of breath, anything like that. I'm just able to hold 25 miles an hour without any issues pedaling up a 7% grade, which is pretty great. Use our little turn signal, turn in here. Remember to turn that turn signal off or it will just stay on. Also, between the huge 4-inch tires, the suspension fork, and the padded seat, and the padded grips, comfort is not much of a concern on this bike. It's very comfy. All right, so we'll turn on our left turn signal, and we will go, and then we'll try these brakes going down the hill. Once I get up over 20 miles an hour though. So these are Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, 2-piston calipers. Pretty standard setup. But let's go ahead and hit the brakes here. 3, 2, 1. And yeah, no issue stopping to a darn near complete stop. I pulled off a little bit early because I don't want to stop in the middle of the road. But nice controlled stop. I always harp on 4-piston brakes on a big fat tire bike like this just because of the rotational mass, the weight of the vehicle, all that. I think 4 pistons make more sense. But as you can see, these 2 pistons have no trouble stopping as you'd want them to without any issues. Even again, I'm going 18 in a residential. Speed up a little bit. Let's say something runs out, 3, 2, 1. I mean, it just stops fast. So again, I can complain about brake pistons, but the proof is in the execution here and it brakes just fine. I think the beauty of things like the Basalt, and the reason why it appeals to so many people, this has been a really big seller for them, it's because it's one of these bikes that, yes, it looks very all-terrain-y off-road with the 4-inch tires and the suspension fork and all that, but with front-to-back LED lighting, headlights, brake lights, turn signals, rear racks, this is just as easily something you could commute in every day to work and then still go play with on the weekend at a campsite or, just out on some bike trails with your friends. And I think that's why these things are so popular. Why get a dedicated commuter when you can have a commuter that can do both? So let's hold the throttle here. Now I did unrestrict the throttle. You can go to advanced settings like I showed you and go beyond 20. You can go all the way up to 30 on the throttle. I'm obviously not going to do it going past this gentleman here. That'd be quite rude. But once we get a clear stretch, I'll use the throttle and see how high we can get it to go before it tops out. On your left. All right, 3, 2, 1. So we're at 25. And this is not exactly flat ground, kind of goes up and down a little bit, but we're at 26, 27, going uphill, back downhill, and here we are, almost at 28. There we go, 28 on the display. And it looks like we're gonna hold there at 28, which makes the most sense because this path is, like I said, not very straight, or not very flat. But 28.3 on the display. Now, should you use 28 miles an hour on throttle, especially on a city bike path? Probably not. Definitely probably break some local rules, but, or don't want to take out your road runners for the day. But just to show you, especially if you decide to go off-road with it, it does have that power to kind of get up to speed and just throttle around like a little dirt bike when you're off-road. Let's go back, put it on the stand, and talk about some of the ups and downs of ownership, maintenance, servicing, things like that. Things that might not be so obvious when you're looking at the bike on the website.
All right, guys, so let's talk about the Mokwheel Basalt 2.0 from more of an ownership standpoint and less about reviews and specs, because there's some things when you're shopping for a bike online that you just may not pick up on when you're looking at the product page and reading all the pretty marketing lingo. Sometimes there's things that you just don't realize till you get home, you ride it, you own it, and you say, oh, I wish I'd have known about that part. That's what I'm gonna try and cover here. So I'll cover some of the good stuff that doesn't immediately stand out, but it goes a long way in the ownership of the bike. First thing is going to be, they added on this bike some new forward and aft brackets that help support this rear rack. And when it's under load, especially a dynamic load, you're riding around, you have gear strapped to the back of this, you don't want weak points for that rear rack to be able to slide or move, especially if you only have connection points here. By adding an extra bracket here to the frame, it's going to just keep that rear rack solid in place, and most importantly, when you're carrying a load on it, which is going to be a really nice feature. Now on top of that, they also added this adjustable stem. Now we don't always see that on e-bikes, but every time we do, it's always really helpful because a lot of times these brands have limited resources. They can't make 4 or 5 frame sizes for every bike model they have, but what they can do is offer certain features that are going to help you dial in a fit better that will compensate for the lack of extra frame sizes. And one of the biggest ones you can do is things like reach and stack, and that can really be adjusted with this adjustable stem. By bringing it up, you bring everything up really high. By slamming it forward, you bring everything down low, stretch out your reach, or bring it in to a short reach. You can do what feels more comfortable for you, not only in riding style, but just in fit based on your body as well. Also, we added motor cutoff sensors on the hydraulic disc brakes. You'll see an extra wire coming out of the brake lever, and what happens is regardless of whether you're asking for throttle or you're pushing pedal assistance, as soon as you hit that brake in an emergency or even a non-emergency, when that brake is activated, it sends an electronic signal to the motor to immediately cut off. That's a really nice safety feature because sometimes you see people, I mean, you've probably seen those videos of someone on a motorcycle or a dirt bike and they accidentally throttle it and can't stop it and they go flying up the back of a truck. This, if you're loading it, moving it, riding it, and you have a moment of panic or you have to stop all of a sudden, as soon as you touch that brake, it kills the motor, which is a really nice safety feature on here. Now, the 2 things that I'll point out for that not my favorite on this bike that you should know about before you buy it. One is we have an exposed chainstay here, and it's already getting some ding marks from that chain. And if you ride this bike off-road, you're gonna get a lot of slap on that chainstay, and ultimately it's gonna chew through that paint job. The nice matte paint on here is gonna eventually expose the aluminum underneath. And just to take care of the bike, I would add some sort of protective strip here. You can grab it off Amazon for just a couple bucks, and it's gonna go a long way in protecting the frame life of this bike. Then the other thing I would harp on, and I've said it before, it's not a huge deal, but it definitely matters to me, is we have 2 piston caliper brakes. They are hydraulic disc brakes, they are Tektro brakes, they're gonna perform well enough on this bike, but I would just prefer to see a 4 piston caliper brake. I'd like a little bit bolder stopping power on a bike with these massive 4-inch wide tires, roughly 85 pounds overall, rolling down the road at close to 30 miles an hour. I want strong, confident braking, and while I do have sufficient braking on here, I feel like there's some room for improvement, and I think 4 piston calipers would go a long way in doing that. Now, mind you, if you want to do that yourself, it would not be much at a local bike shop. They could do it with these parts, but just keep that in mind. If you do want really beefed up braking power for a bike this heavy, going to a 4 piston caliper would go a long way in helping this out. But other than that, it's pretty well done. I enjoyed my time on it, and those were the biggest issues I could find, so hopefully that makes you guys make a decision. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Mokwheel Basalt 2.0. Overall, a really solid, fun bike with lots of off-road power, lots of abilities to do everything from weekend adventures off-grid 2, downtown commutes every day with extra security features, front to back lighting, fenders, rear racks for your cargo. Just a really well set up bike for kind of whatever you feel like doing. Now let's talk about who it's not going to be for. Well, if you're under 5'7", this is not going to be for you because this bike fits from 5'7" up to 6'9". But on the flip side, my taller friends out there north of 6'4", we finally have a solid bike that can withstand your reach and legs and all of that and still feel comfortable. So that's a good thing as well. Now also, little things I pointed out that I didn't love, things like needing kind of a chain slap guard there on the chainstay to protect that paint over time as that chain slaps it. And I'd prefer to see 4-piston caliper brakes on it, but those are really small complaints and I never had any problems with the braking, and I could put a piece of film on that myself for just a couple bucks off of buying some protective film off Amazon. So really these were very small complaints, but it's just at least worth sharing it to you before you spend your money. Now, if I missed anything about this that you do want to know that I didn't cover, just let me know in the comments. I will find that out and get back to you so you have that information. And until the next review, guys, I'll see you out on the trail.